Allen Company, 47 years young and a proud sponsor, wishes OOIDA all the best as you celebrate 50 years.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Redding.
The truck parking crisis hasn't been solved, but at least we're seeing movement on the federal level. Tyson Fisher of Landline Magazine stops by with an update on all things truck parking in our latest installment of The Parking Zone. Rate increases for your insurance policy are sometimes unavoidable, but why do they go up? Landline Now's Ashley Blackford sits down with the experts from OOIDA's Truck Insurance Department to find out. And finally, Election Day is just over a month away, so if you aren't already registered to vote, it's time to get it done. And if you're not going to be in town come Election Day, it's time to look at an absentee ballot as an option. Scott Thompson covers that and more with our state legislative expert, Keith Goebel. But first, the news with Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. Our top story today. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration is imposing limits on the amount of regulatory relief that is granted when a regional emergency declaration is issued. FMCSA made the announcement in the form of a final rule, which is scheduled to publish in the Federal Register soon. The change narrows the amount of relief that is provided to motor carriers and truck drivers providing direct assistance. The biggest change, the regional emergency exemption window is being cut from 30 days to 14. And while the window was cut by more than half, it's longer than the 5 days the agency first proposed back in December. The agency said at the time that the goal was to ensure that the relief granted through emergency declarations is appropriate and tailored to the specifics of the circumstances and the emergency being addressed. The final rule will take effect 60 days after it publishes in the Federal Register. Diesel prices are on the downward slide again, at least according to the latest data from ProMiles.com. They had the national average down more than 2 cents Tuesday morning to $4.49 a gallon. That's compared to a week ago. 8 of the 10 regions ProMiles reports on recorded price drops. The biggest led by the Rocky Mountain region, where prices dipped more than 5.5 cents. We'll have to let you know what the Energy Information Administration numbers say tomorrow. With Monday being a federal holiday, the agency was scheduled to release this week's report on Tuesday afternoon. There was a 16% decrease in load volume last week. Landline Now's Ashley Blackford has the details.
Robert Rouse with DAT says the decrease was expected because the prior week was slightly inflated by end-of-quarter freight. He says they expect this volume for the next couple of weeks before they will see an increase in the lead-up to Thanksgiving.
When we look at the overall strength of the spot market last week, we saw load-to-truck ratios decrease across all 3 equipment types by as much as 27%. When we look at reefers, the volume of reefer load posts decreased by about 13% last week. That was influenced by about 5% week-over-week decrease in the national produce truckload volume. And impacting the softer reefer markets is a 17% lower truckload produce volume originating out of California. And although we're in a transition period between summer and fall produce season, volumes in the cooler northern tier of the country are insufficient to impact the national reefer demand so far. Spot market volumes are around half what they were about a year ago, and also compared to the pre-pandemic average for week 40 of the year. Carrier equipment posts increased by about 4% week over week for reefers, and that resulted in last week's reefer load-to-truck ratio decreasing by about 16% to 2.83.
Rouse says national benchmark broker-to-carrier spot rates without fuel decreased 2 to 4 cents for all 3 equipment types. For Landline Now, I'm Ashley Blackford.
Thanks, Ashley. Mexico is putting pressure on Texas, asking the state to scale down its inspections of commercial trucks at the border. On Sunday, Mexico's largest trucking group issued a statement, noting that the inspections are causing major delays of up to 24 hours at checkpoints and leaving at least 19,000 trucks loaded with $1.9 billion of goods stuck waiting in Mexico. Then one day later on Monday, Mexico's president sent a diplomatic note to the United States protesting the inspections. President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador claims that Governor Greg Abbott's decision to ramp up truck inspections was, quote, very irresponsible, politically motivated, and severely affecting cross-border trade. Governor Abbott ordered the increased inspections last month. Operation Lone Star, as it's called, is meant to deter illegal border crossings and drug smuggling. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission is suing 2 Ohio-based trucking companies for harassing and firing 2 of its mechanics because of their sexual orientation. The EEOC says Transport America and Transportation Enterprise Services violated federal law by allowing the harassment of 2 gay mechanics, retaliating against them for complaining about the harassment, and then ultimately firing them. The lawsuit says the harassment began in late 2018 at Transport's facility in North Jackson, Ohio. It came in the form of slurs and other derogatory comments, physical violence, and other inappropriate contact, defacement of uniforms, and other hostile behavior, the suit claims. The EEOC says Human Resources and Management were both aware of what was going on, but didn't do anything to stop it. The alleged conduct violates Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibits discrimination because of sex, including sexual orientation and gender identity. The EEOC is seeking a court order that prohibits the companies from doing this type of thing again and lost wages for the fired employees, along with compensatory damages, punitive damages, and other relief. Meanwhile, the EEOC is also suing another trucking company, this one based in Michigan. Only this case is about religious discrimination. The lawsuit was filed in federal court in Cleveland, Ohio, on behalf of Charles Lynch III, who belongs to the Torah-observant Christianity religion. When Lynch told his company managers at Wheeler Trucking that he couldn't work Saturdays because his faith requires him to be off for the Sabbath, the lawsuit claims management responded with an expletive, telling him "F your religion," and then fired him. Lynch also claims he was subject to harassment over a more than 4-year period while working for Wheeler, harassment that included racial slurs. The EEOC says that's a violation of Lynch's civil rights. It's seeking similar measures as the other Ohio case, a permanent injunction barring Wheeler from doing this type of thing again, back pay, and other damages. And while we're at it, the EEOC went after another trucking company for discrimination and won. Werner Enterprises was the target here. The agency filed a suit on behalf of Victor Robinson, who has lived his whole life deaf. He told ABC News that he passed through Werner's CDL training program, but when he applied for a job in 2016, the company's vice president of safety and compliance told him he wouldn't get the job because he couldn't hear. Robinson reached out to the EEOC, who filed the lawsuit claiming Werner violated the Americans with Disabilities Act. Last month, a jury agreed, awarding Robinson more than $36 million in damages. Werner has denied any wrongdoing and is likely to file an appeal. Doing that, Robinson's attorneys note, would reduce the amount awarded to Robinson to $300,000 due to a statutory cap for punitive damages. And finally, we're still about 6 months away from a total solar eclipse that will cross over parts of North America, but the Arkansas DOT is already getting ready, not for the event itself, but for the traffic it's expected to bring in. A DOT spokesperson told 4029 News the state expects to get 1.5 million visitors on the weekend of the eclipse, which falls on April 8th, 2024. Arkansas officials have already identified potential traffic choke points and are making plans, which will go to the governor's office before being released to the public. The total solar eclipse will cross over Mexico, the United States, and Canada. Anyone located in the total eclipse path from Texas to Maine will have a chance to see the total eclipse. That is if the weather holds up. That's Landline Now News for today. I'm Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Scott. You can write a letter to your elected officials in Congress or look up contact information for lawmakers by using the website fightingfortruckers.com. Again, that website, fightingfortruckers.com. Next, Tyson Fisher of Landline Magazine stops by for the latest installment of The Parking Zone. And Ashley Blackford finds out the reason behind rate increases for your insurance policy. We'll be back in just a moment with more. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Control your toll costs and eliminate tolling headaches with Prepass Tolls. Prepass Tolls means toll volume discounts. Just one invoice for all tolls and fewer violations. Call 877-878-5970 or go to prepass.com.
Attention all truckers, Dean Michael, the tax doctor here. I want to talk to you about those dreaded tax problems. I know you want to keep on trucking and not even think about them, but let's face it, they're not going away all on their own. You need professional help. I've been helping truckers put their tax problems in the rearview mirror for years. I can help you too. Call me now for a free consultation at 888-557-4020 or go to mytaxhelpmd.com. It's like I always say, keep your eyes on the road, I'll keep mine on the IRS. 888-557-4020.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
A blank space on many maps with the distance between parking spaces seemingly as great as infinity. It is the boundary that separates safety and security from the dangers of the road, the space between electronic signs and a place in which to rest. It is not a dimension of the imagination, but instead the reality faced by truck drivers every single day. It is a place we call the parking zone. Here are your guides for this journey into parking news, good and bad, Scott Thompson and Tyson Fisher.
Thanks, Mark. Scott Thompson here. Tyson is over there. Hey, Tyson.
Pleasure being here.
Always a pleasure to have you. Always good to talk about what's going on in the world of truck parking. Sometimes we talk about good things and sometimes bad things.
Sure.
We'll start with a good thing here.
Yep.
Congress, Congress is a bit of a mess right now these days, probably an evergreen statement, but especially right now. But despite all that, we're seeing more and more support for the truck parking bills in both the House and the Senate.
We are. Most recently, just here on October 3rd, Representative Stephen Cohen, Democrat Tennessee, became the latest lawmaker to co-sponsor H.R. 2367, which is the Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act. September was a particularly busy month for truck parking in general, especially for the Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act. A total of 7 co-sponsors were added on the House side just in September alone. And we'll go ahead and highlight who those people are. Those would be Michael Guest, Republican Mississippi, Eric Halchin, Republican Indiana, John Joyce, Republican Pennsylvania, Susan Lee, Democrat Nevada, Kathy Manning, Democrat North Carolina, Wiley Nickel, also Democrat from North Carolina, and Chris Pappas, Democrat from New Hampshire. So, all across the country, from Nevada all the way to the East Coast of North Carolina, Republicans, Democrats. I mean, when we say this is a bipartisan bill, it's really a bipartisan bill, And I hate to use the words as played out so much, but this is one of those common sense bills, you would think. And so,
yes, you would.
And I think in total, on the House side, the Truck Parking and Safety Improvement Act has 38 co-sponsors as of this conversation. So it's moving along. It is moving along, and the Senate bill has, I think, 11 co-sponsors right now. We added a couple there recently as well, right? So in September, again, Senators Tammy Duckworth and Richard Durbin, they are both Democrats in Illinois. They signed on to S-1034, which is the Senate version of the Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act. And then also in September, Senators J.D. Vance, he's a Republican in Ohio, and Raphael Warnock, who's a Democrat in Georgia, also co-sponsored it. So, as you mentioned, 11 co-sponsors so far with that on the Senate side. Aside from the co-sponsors, there's been a little, and just a reminder what the Truck Safety Improvement Act will do. It would allocate $755 million over 3 years to the construction of parking spots. So according to the bill text, any project funded by the bill cannot include paid parking. Yep. And all parking under the bill must be publicly accessible and free of charge. So, I mean, kind of a big deal. But there's been some more movement in terms of people urging Congress to pass this act. Yeah, safety groups, I believe, right, have spoken up recently. Yeah, so recently here on October 2nd, the Institute for Safer Trucking and Road Safe America, they sent a letter to the Transportation Committee leadership in both the House and the Senate, urging them to ensure the passage of the Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act. So kind of a big deal there. Got more people telling Congress that this needs to get done. Yeah, and
Not to throw cold water on this, I think there is a greater sense of urgency now. We're into the fall. We're about a year away now from the midterms, or not the midterms, rather, the big election here. We're going to see a lot of perhaps turnover. Anytime that happens, these bills tend to kind of fade away if they didn't get enough support.
They do.
And really now, before we hit election season and every other commercial on television is a politician you either agree or don't agree with, really now is the time to make sure that these things gain some momentum and get pushed forward. That's my only fear here, is that potentially these get lost as we enter the holidays and then again election season. So, we say it all the time. Please, do reach out to your lawmakers, express to them why this is so important, why it's a safety issue, an inconvenience issue, and everything in between. Really, please do reach out to them. Fightingfortruckers.com, we should mention the website, is the easiest way to do that. But this really is a time for making sure that lawmakers get on board with this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. And again, please do reach out there. As we do continue waiting for Congress to take action, the Biden administration is using federal grant money to add truck parking around the country. And we recently got news of more grant money going out specifically for truck parking. Tyson, can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration announced more than $80 million in grant awards, and that includes funding for truck parking. It's not just truck parking, but truck parking is part of that funding. The funding aims to reduce the frequency and severity of commercial motor vehicle crashes. That's the purpose here. And it'll support truck drivers by expanding access to truck parking, investing in critical technology, improving safety in work zones, rural areas, high crash corridors, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, truck parking is definitely part of that. And that's something that I've been seeing more and more in these federal fundings and grants, is that truck parking is getting mentioned specifically. I think, this time last year, we didn't see that as much. Now with, with the bipartisan infrastructure law, and then the push, by people like OOIDA and these safety groups getting it out there, the federal government is paying more attention to truck parking when they're, divvying out the funds. So it's a good thing. And we're seeing that more and more and more. And so this is just one example of that going on.
Absolutely. And I was going to mention, too, one example of this sort of priority being put into action. We saw outside of Sioux Falls, South Dakota last month when Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg was there to celebrate an expansion of truck parking, again, just outside of Sioux Falls. This is clearly a priority for them. They're saying it. They are, taking action and doing things like this. So it is refreshing to see this commitment to this issue. You would hope that things would go a little bit faster and we'd see a little more money going out, but we're getting there, I think, is maybe the point.
We're getting there. And, as you mentioned, Buttigieg, had a whole press conference specifically about truck parking, and, he's the transportation secretary of the United States. He's got a lot of, topics that he has to address, on any given day. It's everything from rail to, air, water, freight being just part of that, piece of the pie. And then there's a whole things going on within the freight industry. And so for him to, focus on truck parking on a 2-day event, I believe it was.
Yeah, he was there for 2 days, yep.
Yeah, it's a big deal, and I got a quote from him on during one of those events, which he said, I want to concentrate in particular on what new truck parking means for drivers and for everybody who counts on this highway. And he went on to say that I know that truck parking is an issue that most Americans probably don't think about every day, but it's a vitally important one. And that's kind of goes back to what you were saying with, with coming with, the midterms and elections and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's not a sexy topic that's going to be brought up in the commercials.
No, I don't expect that. No. Yeah.
But it is, as he pointed out, vitally important. And there's no other way to express that than, and again, just to reiterate, reach out to your lawmakers and really let them know that this is an important issue. And kind of, point out the safety concerns, because it's not just about the truckers out there. It's about the motoring public at large here. Because and we see it too often where someone will crash into a parked truck that's on the side of the highway.
Yeah.
Oftentimes would be fatal. And so these are the unintended consequences of not addressing the truck parking issue.
Yeah, and I was there outside of Sioux Falls, and I got a few minutes to speak with the secretary, who, again, reiterated that he is committed to this, that he does recognize it as a safety issue. He also sees the issues that are pushing drivers out of the industry, this being one. So, yeah, they understand this. I did speak with one other OOIDA member there who told the secretary and then later told me that it's nice to see these things, expansion projects, but he also would like to see other areas where they have truck parking not being shut down, maybe putting some of that money toward them and keeping them open. Again, we were talking earlier, it's going to take an all-hands-on-deck approach.
Sure.
So every little bit helps. It is refreshing to see that we're seeing some progress on this, but we've got a ways to go here. We're seeing people talk about it. One person who has been championing this issue for a long time is Representative Mike Bost of Illinois,
Indeed.
Obviously sponsor of the Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act in the House. And he has been very vocal of late, too, right, calling for more action, get something done.
Yeah, pretty much. So during a September House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee hearing that was titled Oversight of the Department of Transportation's Policies and Programs, again, over, big umbrella there as to what to cover here.
Yeah.
Mike Bost, again, Republican Illinois, he's the one who introduced the Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act. He spent his time to highlight the need to expand truck parking. I mean, that's something he's just not going to let go, and for good reason. But although Bost acknowledged the recent success, such as the aforementioned funding, the representative from Illinois also told Buttigieg during the hearing, Buttigieg was there at the hearing, he told Buttigieg during the hearing that more needs to be done. The exact quote here is, "There's been nothing substantial to expand new truck parking locations, so the problems still exist." And he's absolutely right about that. I mean, go back and talk about the event you were at. I mean, I think there was, it was a big event, but I think it was like a total of 11 truck parking spaces were added.
Yeah, about a dozen, yeah.
And so, I mean, it's better than nothing, that's for sure. And, and then again, just to have how symbolic it is to have the Secretary of Transportation to, have a press conference about truck parking.
Yep, and highlight the issue, the problem, yeah.
Certainly something, but as Boss pointed out, this is all good and well, but, we need to really get the ball rolling here and, see some more action as far as just, more new locations here.
Yeah, and I think obviously they had a lot to talk about during that hearing that you mentioned there. I do think, though, that Representative Bost was the only one to bring up truck parking specifically in that, was that a marathon hearing that day?
Sure.
I can't remember how many hours it went on, but there were a lot of issues raised during that hearing. Truck parking, I think, was raised once, so if you've got a tally going at home, add a notch there, I suppose. Real quick here, Tyson, let's finish up. We talk about the federal government and all these other things that are happening on the federal level to get more truck parking. In the meantime, we still see private companies continuing to pick up the slack.
Sure. This time, we're going to focus on Sheetz truck stop. Sheetz recently opened 3 new locations in Ohio, just within a few days of each other. So just real quick, there's one in New Concord, Ohio, just located off of I-70, exit 169. That's 29 truck parking spaces. One in North Jackson, Ohio, which is off I-70, exit 57. That's 59 truck parking spaces. And then Springfield, Ohio, located off I-70, exit 59, 32 truck parking spaces. So a total of 120 truck parking spaces right off I-70. Good job by Sheetz.
There you go. Round of applause for that. We have to leave it there for now, unfortunately, Tyson, but we appreciate your coverage on all things truck parking and appreciate you being here today.
Thanks for having me.
You can check out Tyson's work in every issue of Landline Magazine and just about every day on our website, landline.media. We've got to take a quick break, but Landline Now is back right after this.
Firestone tires are for more of everything. More miles for every tire dollar, and more confidence in your fleet. At Firestone, we help fleets save with dependable value. Find your local Firestone dealer today at firestonetire.com/dealer.
Ready to make more money? Use a better load board. For a limited time, get 50% off TruckStop Loadboard Pro. Just go to truckstop.com/go and enter promo code READY2023 when you purchase Loadboard Pro.
When it's time to overhaul your truck engine, help protect it by insisting on a genuine Vibratech TVD crankshaft damper. Heavy duty, absolute premium quality, and they're made right here in the USA. Find a dealer at VibratechTVD.com.
Landline Now, welcome back. Like tires, fuel, and an engine, insurance is one of those things you just have to have for your truck. But not all insurance is created equal. Ashley Blackford is here with the experts from OOIDA's Truck Insurance Department to answer some questions.
Thanks, Mark, and hello to Trina Skywalker and Trista Roby with OOIDA's Insurance Department. How are you doing today, ladies?
Fantastic.
Great, Ashley.
Now, today we are talking about why rates go up, which is a topic I'm sure everyone loves to hear. Now, I think it's safe to say everyone worries about this. How often do rates go up?
It really depends on the economy, the year. You know, we definitely saw times in our career where rates didn't go up. You really couldn't plan for it or expect it or that sort of thing.
Well, and it was almost the traditional, like, another year loss-free. Like, your rates go down a little bit. Not every time, you know, but there was a time frame where we saw that.
Yeah, where that was a little bit more of the common ground. But, I mean, we're sort of in an economy where you see the opposite. I mean, rates are going up annually, regardless of what people's history looks like or records. You know, a very clean history, longevity, that sort of thing. They're still seeing rate increases. The same thing that you're sort of seeing on like your homeowner's insurance or your auto insurance or in the grocery store. I mean, like everything is going up, really.
Well, and unfortunately, the pro is, you know, if you have another year loss-free, yours aren't going up as much as other folks.
Mm-hmm. But that still must be frustrating for people who do have a clean record.
Oh, absolutely.
It is frustrating. And I mean, the thing is that we can all empathize because, number one, we are all being hit with increases just everywhere we go.
Right.
But like I said, I own a home and an auto. Mm-hmm. And so
Good job on life.
Thank you. Took a little bit, but you know. But I mean, it's easy to be empathetic with the people that we're talking to because we're dealing with it in all lines of insurance.
Right. Well, and something we had discussed the other day was the financing of premium. So most insurance companies, I would say 90+% finance the annual premium. And so you're not just paying like these monthly installments. There's also a finance charge, finance fees, whatnot. And, you know, when the economy has an influx of increased rates everywhere, you know, your mortgage, an auto loan, whatever it may be, that's also going to impact insurance. Not as much as other things, you know, and which is what we're discussing, the things that can impact that. But it is a factor.
But especially those interest rates on those finance premiums.
Right.
What are some of the other reasons that rates can go up?
At-fault accidents.
Yeah.
That'll do it.
That's a big one.
It's probably the biggest, I would say.
Yeah. That's definitely the largest increase we see is for at-fault accidents. You know, you're also at risk of cancellation depending on the severity of the accidents and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But I guess not quite as obvious would be an increased number of not at-fault incidents.
Right.
People don't really know or understand that a lot of research has gone into that to say that if there is an increased number of not at fault incidents. I mean, number one, you're looking at the possibility of just like wrong place, wrong time, but that is an increased risk to an insurance company. But there's also been research that says if there's 2 or 3 not at fault accidents, there's a chance of an at fault coming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I was going to add to that, the not at fault incidents or accidents, there's such a variety because we see a lot of hit and run incidents. And if I'm being honest, we see a lot of that in the Northeast. You know, in truck parking or something, like I was sleeping in my cab woke up, someone had, busted off a mirror. They're not always dramatic. They're not always, total losses or a severe amount of damage.
Right.
But there is a lot of incidents all over the country of hit and run type stuff. Also, most insurance companies consider like an animal strike and not at fault. But I can attest to that in my personal auto. If a deer T-bones you a few times, your rate's still going to go up because you're clearly in an area where that's going to happen.
Right.
Or it's more likely to happen than other areas.
And, regardless, a lot of times the insurance company is paying out. That's hard also. I mean, when you're looking at it objectively, the insurance company is paying out regardless of fault in some of those incidents.
Yeah, and some of those cannot be helped. If you wake up and your truck has been damaged, by someone else who's not there, who took off, whatever, or an animal strike, that is out of your control. Also, though, we've seen instances where someone gets rear-ended 4 times in 3 years. The underwriters at some point are going to say, okay, but are you not aware as a driver? Are you, merging over when you shouldn't be or too late?
Brake checking.
Well, I actually had an incident like that. There was a guy that called for a quote, and he was giving me details of an accident like that. I think it was him that rear-ended someone, but come to find out, this particular driver did that. It was kind of a scam for insurance payouts. So they'd merge over at the last minute. They would get rear-ended. It would go to court. They'd get a settlement. And if I'm not mistaken, when I was talking to this caller, they said that the gentleman did that to a judge one time. Ooh. And so that's how they got busted and realized like it had happened multiple times. Not saying that any of our callers or insureds are pulling that kind of a scam by any means.
But insurance companies are aware of the possibility of some of those types
happening
of issues as
or
well.
just not defensive driving, is what we were getting at. But
And this isn't, I know we've talked about this topic before, but dash cam, I assume that's when that would come in handy.
Absolutely.
To see kind of how the incident
I think
out.
we actually see less of some of those types of fraudulent things because of, the introduction of dash cams.
Well, yeah, and kind of going back to my story, I feel like if people are pulling that, if they're going to do that, they might be more likely to do that with like a semi-truck because insurance is higher. The limits are higher. The liability's higher.
They're almost guaranteed to have insurance to be on the road.
I wouldn't recommend it because I don't care what the payout is.
Well, I was going to say, that's the payment might be higher. The danger also.
I don't want to get hit by a semi-truck.
No. What about when it comes to discounts?
Well, that's something that we've discussed a lot too, and conversations we have to have with the customer about like claim-free discounts.
Yeah, and if you've had, even if, again, those things that feel not at fault, but it's been a payout on the insurance, so you might see your rate go up because you have that incident, but then you also might see your rate go up because you've lost a discount that maybe you've carried all along for not having any incidents. So, you're seeing larger increases when that sort of thing happens.
Right. And that's a hard conversation to have, trying to explain to someone, the underwriters didn't charge you more. They didn't surcharge you. They didn't bump up your premium over the base, I guess you would say. But when you still lose those discounts, when you have like claim-free, loss-free discounts that you lose, it's still going to increase your premium.
Right.
So even to tell a caller, they didn't surcharge you, they didn't bump it up.
It still went up.
Yeah,
they still feel the impact.
Yeah, absolutely.
What about catastrophic losses in certain areas that are more prone to hurricanes or tornadoes?
That's an area that's hard to explain too, as far as you might live in an area prone to those types of events, a hurricane or a tornado. And maybe you haven't filed a claim because of that. Maybe you weren't impacted because of that. But if an insurance company pays out so many claims, statewide, even though it wasn't paid out to you, it's going to be an increase.
You're still going to feel that.
Yeah, you're going to feel the across the board increase. That was air quotes.
Yeah.
But you're going to feel the across the board increase, partially because of what that insurance company is paid, but also because, again, we're talking about the increase of risk, the increase of the likelihood that the insurance company is going to have to pay. And they have a lot of actuaries and that sort of thing that go into the research of this to say the likelihood of something happening in the next year with, these certain situations is larger.
And I would imagine, because we deal strictly in commercial truck insurance. So I would imagine that an insurance company that deals with homeowners, personal auto, commercial auto, when they're in several different facets.
And then a catastrophic loss occurs.
Yeah. I mean, everyone's going to feel the impact.
Yeah, that's a hit for...
I would guess a larger hit than a company that just deals in, commercial auto or just personal auto or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And that's just educated guessing. We don't really know what those companies are dealing with or what kind of increases they're seeing, but I would guess it's pretty significant. If there's
it makes sense.
That level of payout. Yeah.
Yeah.
And for those who have older trucks, do rates increase more frequently, would you say, or?
There is sort of this odd thing, where newer trucks are expensive to repair because it's brand new truck, and then they kind of fall off a little bit. And then older trucks, because parts are harder to find and that kind of thing, then older trucks can also start falling into that category where they become more expensive as well. Like I said, there's part shortages and that sort of thing happening, again with everybody.
Yeah, well, and when it's hard to find an older part, it's going to be more expensive.
Yeah.
So not only is it difficult to locate or find, but then the cost is going to be higher too because it is more rare, than something that's just a couple years old.
And what about when it comes to like driver turnover? Say I've hired and fired 18 drivers over the course of a year. How does that look to the underwriters doing up my policy?
There's a stability factor. I would say not just with drivers. There's all kinds of different things that the underwriters view as a stability risk. And what's unfortunate about that is sometimes, you're trying to find a really good driver and you're not, you have a string of bad luck. Yeah. But also, if they see that these drivers have limited experience or violations, that's not going to help anything. Just because you've had a few drivers on the policy isn't necessarily risky, but
in and of itself, yeah.
Right.
But if there's another, if there are other factors playing into that, I feel like, you could be looking at increases in premiums or again cancellations.
Right. Yeah, and one thing, I know we're short on time here. One thing that I want to add, not about driver turnover or stability, but as far as increase in premiums and seeing insurance rates rise, attorney involvement is huge. It's huge. That's something that we've seen a dramatic increase with because attorneys are getting a portion of your settlement. And not all of them, we're not generalizing here, but we have seen situations where, they're pushing for surgeries that aren't needed, unnecessary medical procedures.
Yeah.
Because it's going to mean you get a higher settlement. It means they get a higher, their chunk's going to be bigger.
Okay.
And when they're paying out, those large sums, it's going to cause an impact on the rates.
All right. Ladies, thank you very much for all the information.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Our thanks to Trina Skywalker and Trista Roby of OOIDA's Truck Insurance Department. If you have any questions about insurance, you can call 816-229-5791. For Landline Now, I'm Ashley Blackford. We'll be back after this.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Welcome back to the home stretch of Landline Now today. Like it or not, or I guess believe it or not, another election year is fast approaching, and now is the time to make sure your voice is heard at the ballot box. Joining us with the details, as always, and to explain how trucking factors into all of this is Keith Goebel of Landline Magazine. Keith, good to see you.
Scott, good to see you. How you doing?
Doing just fine. Always good to have you here. So we're still, about 13 months away from the big election, but if you're wanting to vote, if you're not already registered, now is the time to get a move on.
Yeah, and of course, on an annual basis as we get into the fall, we always, with Landline, and we mention it here, is starting the process, making sure that you have an opportunity to have your say, your voice is heard on issues. And yes, 2024 being the presidential election, there will be multiple opportunities throughout the course of the year for voters to have their say on issues and folks who are running for election. You've got primaries start early in the year. I think they're really in full swing by March of next year, and there are always going to be a lot of issues in elected offices on ballots in a presidential election year. There's not as much of that going on in an odd year election, which is what we're in, and we are weeks away from now. The focus is always in those odd year elections on local issues. So yeah, it's always a reminder as we start getting into fall for folks who have not registered that really they need to do it this week. If you don't have the opportunity to do it tomorrow morning, it needs to be done this week if you want to, make sure. There are some states maybe that you don't have the opportunity. The time has passed at this point for having your getting registered to vote and getting that process taken care of, so you can do it next month. But if it might be the case, maybe the time has run out on you for this fall. Go ahead and do it now so that we can get you involved for next year, which, as we said, there's going to be a lot of opportunity and a lot of things that you're going to be able to have your say on.
Yeah, and the good news is that registration is pretty simple in most states. A majority of them, I believe, now have online registration, but not all of them. But again, if you're looking to register, it should be pretty easy to do so these days.
Oh, without a doubt. Going online, obviously, is probably the most likely way that folks are going to go and research their particular state. Most states accept voter registration in person or by mail. You can print off a registration form online, even if your state does not offer online registration. I mean, obviously, if they offer online registration, you can do it all electronically. But at a minimum, you can go online and you can find your state's registration information so that you can send it in. It's there are only a handful of states that do not offer online registration, but obviously the bulk of states, you can get it all done then and there. Definitely easier for folks to get that process started.
And truck drivers, as we know, are often not home or even really in their home state on Election Day. But fortunately, over the past several years, absentee voting has become more and more common, and that is something that truck drivers obviously should be looking into if they know they're not going to be around Election Day.
Yeah, for professions that require a lot of travel, absentee voting really should be what is the focus, getting that taken care of. A lot of states have it already set up where they will send out, if you are on a permanent absentee ballot list, there are certain situations that states require to have a permanent absentee ballot made available. For the most part, it's not going to include your work, but that is available for some folks out there. Absentee voting, all states offer advanced voting so folks can take advantage of. There are 35 states that offer no excuse absentee voting. I mean, you can just go in and you can cast a ballot early. You don't have to have an excuse. I mean, in states that require an excuse, for the most part, I mean, I know historically, whenever I've done that in Missouri, it's really pretty simple. You just have to provide some sort of an excuse. It doesn't have nobody's going to come and check with you on election day to make sure that that was actually what happened. But sure. But there are ways for that to get taken care of, and go in and make sure that, again, that your voice is heard without having to be at home and then traveling to the ballot place on Election Day.
You want to give us a list of those excuses you've used over the years, Keith, or you want to keep those close to your vest?
I'm trying to remember. But it pretty typical, like just I'm not going to be available that day to go vote. I mean, it's pretty that simple. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's early voting, as you mentioned, all mail voting. There are a number of options out there. It will depend on the state that you're in, but as you mentioned there, you can go to your state Board of Election website and, basically get that information there. Sure. And it's worth pointing out, all mail voting, I mean, there are those states out there, and that list is growing in length. You've got states from California to Vermont that are making all mail voting available, which is essentially you're going to get your ballot in the mail. You're going to get it well ahead of time, and you fill it out, and then you send it in. So that's also growing in popularity. I say those 8 states. I mean, there's about 16 more states that have some elections that are done by mail. So that is obviously in the future that is going to be something that's going to be more and more available. Finally, let's shift gears here away from all the election talk and talk about Georgia. Credit where credit is due, Keith. You called it when you said Georgia was likely to extend its fuel tax holiday another 30 days. And wouldn't you know it, you were right. A broken clock, right? Yeah, absolutely. This is the second round, going back to last year, where Georgia's had a fuel tax holiday. The first round ended up lasting like 8 months, I believe. We are moving into month number 2 of this fuel tax holiday. Applies for both gas and diesel, just a complete tax holiday from the state. Diesel tax of 35 cents, 31 some odd cents for gas. But yeah, we're starting month number 2. The ending date of this extension is November 11th. Again, I'll say it. I mean, I think it's safe to assume that this is going to probably continue into next year. Time will tell, but it is something that Georgia feels that they're able to continue to do. So, we will see how long this round lasts. And like a pharmaceutical commercial that has to give the long list of possible side effects, I do feel like we have to give the obligatory IFTA reminder here for Georgia. If you're running in-state, you're pretty much in the clear, yada, yada. Go over that real quick for us, Keith. Yeah, and hopefully I'll go over everything sufficiently here, trying to... You should have it memorized by now, yeah. But yeah, hey, motor carriers licensed with IFTA, if they're traveling in Georgia, they're exempt from the motor fuel excise tax, of course, during the suspension period, which is a great deal. Motor carriers, they are able to purchase that qualifying motor fuel. It is tax-free, and if in traveling non-taxable miles in the state. Now, IFTA returns, they still are required to be filed for the quarters that include the tax-free period. So we've got now September 13th was the start date. And as of right now, the end date is November 11th. So reporting those as non-IFTA miles traveling in Georgia. The state of Georgia's IFTA website, they do have a list of instructions for reporting that are very, very handy. So definitely a good site to visit, the motor fuel website there for the state of Georgia. But yeah, all in all, definitely a win. Georgia's reported what their average diesel price is about 34 cents below the national average because of this tax holiday. There you go. Keith, pleasure as always. We'll see you next time. Yeah, thanks for having me. That's our show for today. We appreciate you tuning in. We're back tomorrow, but in the meantime, you can get the latest trucking news on our website, landline.media.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad.
A son.
A husband.
Wife.
I'm a writer.
Photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars. Fishing.
My kids.
Chrome.
And I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us! Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.